What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. BobbyFi with my man, Eric Sheets-Haber. We are going to be talking through today's NBA slate, and it's sort of the calm before the storm. It's not really the calm. It's a nice little slate, but there's a huge slate tomorrow with the giant tournaments that are serious, like seven-figure money.
What's tomorrow night? What is there, 2,500?
There's 2,500 for $1 million for first.
On DraftKings or Fanduel?
On DraftKings. And I think I have one ticket. I'm not even sure about that, but I think I
have a ticket. Yeah, maybe I should try to get one of
those. I think I'm gonna play a few entries though in this one and sort of, I don't know. We'll see how the slate goes. We'll see how the day goes. But anyway, I had some shots last night. Did well overall, but not like really well, like just sort of like one of those meh kind of nights. But it felt good because it always feels good to be in the hunt, and it was sort of like a turbo slate. Like we had all the games all at once. Sheets, how did you do? I know your daughter, it sounds like her production of the play went really well, and that's great. Great to hear.
Yeah, that was great. With respect to DFS, I left before the Van Vliet news came out, so I was unable to capitalize on all that Toronto stuff. But I did end up cashing in the Monster and Fanduel, and I wanted to pull up my screen because I wanted to talk to you about that because I didn't get back till later, and I saw that you had mentioned that you had a shot, and then it kind of fizzled out. It's just from me reading the Discord.
Yeah,
you were saying that if the Milwaukee might have been closer, you might have had a chance. But I want to pull the lineup up because I have a question about it.
Let's talk about it. This is what we're here to do.
So this was mine over on the left here, which cashed without any of that other stuff. But here's the question I have. Because it doesn't seem like something that you usually do. And I was wondering how you came to do this. Like usually when you play someone like Giannis, I don't usually see you play like another guy from Milwaukee. You know what I mean? Like one of the big guys. I usually see when you do it, you either play Giannis or the other guys. What led you to decide to, now I haven't spoken to you about it. So what led you to decide to play both Holiday and Giannis? Was that because you were going to also play LaMelo, or was it something else?
No, I actually talked about this on.
Okay.
Me and Rody were live. We actually talked about this directly. I said one of my three big entries will have Holiday, Giannis, and LaMelo, because if that game stays close, and again it didn't, but if that game stays close, it's the absolute environment. There's nothing you're going to ask for a better thing. Milwaukee, as good a defense as they've played in the years and as many good defenders as they have, they play so fast, and nobody plays faster and worse defense than Charlotte. So it was absolutely just trying to capitalize on the Coors-like environment. You know what I mean? It was basically the Coors game.
Right, I get it. But you.
It was because LaMelo. There's no way I'm playing that lineup without LaMelo.
Ever. Okay.
Ever. That's the truth. Maybe one would slip through if I was like scripting or something, but right. I would pretty much set a rule if I was going to play two guys from the Bucks when everybody's healthy, that I would have to have at least one run back, if not more. And honestly, if they were priced a little more reasonably, it would have gotten me into more trouble last night, because I would have been all over that game and just prayed. You play and pray. You hope the game stays close.
Right.
And that was a great environment. And what I was saying was that, it wasn't like I had any thing outlandish that was incredible in this lineup, except for the actual, most people are not going to build Giannis with another member of Milwaukee without a full game stack. And I was like, okay, can I run it back with just LaMelo? Oddly enough, I didn't play much Brandon Goodwin. This was one lineup I did. He had a monster game, of course, and Cleveland broke my hearts at the end. I know we have some big bettors out there, and I loved Cleveland plus 3.5. It was a tie game with, I think, 10 seconds to go. And so that was a little bit, it was a little bit of a bummer, but it was, and there was other ways I could have gone about this. I mean, there's, it was just as likely I could have played Kevin Love with Mo Bamba in that lineup, and I jump into like whatever 8th place or 6th place, but it wouldn't have been enough to win, and it would have been though had the game stayed close possibly. So it was kind of fun. It looks like you did okay though on DraftKings.
Yeah, this was all right. This is my the 3 entry max. I mean, this again, I didn't have any of this Toronto stuff, so I was happy to get what I got. So this one go over 300 points. This was good. I mean, it had It had Shea, and I did get to Chetty Osman, and your recommendation actually, and I had him in I rated as like a top 6 or 7 guy. I just figured he'd be really chalky, but I guess when he doesn't start, nobody ever plays him. So
and all the chalks slanted, like Bruce Brown, who was, and by the way, Bruce Brown, I mean, I think he had 26.5 fantasy points like halfway through the third quarter in that game. It just got to be a blowout.
Yeah.
And by the way, with Toronto missing everybody, it was hard to predict that they were going to win by 36
Yeah.
in Brooklyn. I know Brooklyn was missing pieces, but it was like, I thought, they've been smashed twice in a row. So there's a lot of, it was one of those nights where there was a lot of big spreads and a lot of strange environments.
Well, what's interesting is the reason why I didn't do so well on DraftKings, aside from this, is I deliberately went for correlation yesterday. So what I did was I played some whatchamacallit, Murray and Morant together.
Right.
And I also played, for example, Sabonis and Shea together, right?
Right.
And it turns out that that wasn't the way to do it yesterday.
But if you played Fox and Sabonis.
Right, but I didn't like Fox, right?
Right, no, exactly. That's the thing. So I had a few Fox and Sabonis, and I really I talked about it live, and we were talking about how that one of those guys, I preferred Sabonis too. I had more Sabonis than I did Fox. But when with the chalk being the way it was, Fox ended up like 5% owned because of the way the guard situation was.
Right.
And honestly, if we had to do this slate over again, and you didn't tell me anything, and I didn't know what was going to happen, I would probably, at the ownership that Brendan Goodwin was, I probably would have faded him. I probably would have faded Vincent. I probably would have played a ton of Malachi Flynn and gotten weird with the rest of my lineups. And I don't even love that. I'm just saying, like, strategically, it's when you get these good, that game by Goodwin is not going to be duplicated. You know what I mean? This is, as much as someone might be a good play, he's not a 45 fantasy point good play. He's like a 30 fantasy point good play. You know what I mean? He could play 100 games and he's not going to get 45 fantasy points. And it just so happened that it was his night. And he started off crazy hot and just kept going. But I mostly, the weirdest part is my lineups where I didn't fade these guys actually was good. If I would have stuck with maybe the chalk as a core, I would have probably made more. But again, I would do the same thing again if you gave me the opportunity. You have to fade some of the questionable stuff or make weird pivots. And my weird pivots were like Van Vliet and all this stuff. And then then Siakam and Barnes and everybody became popular. The weird thing is that Barnes only was 16% owned on DraftKings. And I just think people don't, everybody's projection oriented. I think this is a really important point to touch on before we get into this slate, that everyone is so geared up on, oh, this guy projects like this. You're talking about players who are projecting within 3 or 4 points of each other, having ownership at 10x, 20x what the other one is. That should not be a thing. This is basketball. It's way too fluid of a game. You need to absolutely just like, okay, you know what? I know the guy's a good play. And maybe at 5,200, he gets 30 fantasy points or 35. He did happen to get 45 last night, but I can fade that, And by the way, in my best lineup, I didn't have Shea, who put up 1 million fantasy points, So like there are other routes. That's the one thing I want to keep reminding people. You don't have to worry about like, yeah, it sucks when somebody else puts up 1 million fantasy points and you don't have them, but there are plenty of ways to skin a cat or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing I took away from yesterday. I felt good though about the process. I felt good about the lineups that I built. It was a night where I was heavier. It's hard to be totally away from the chalk, but by the end of the day, some of the early chalk wasn't chalk anymore. And that's why on those kind of days, I tend to win on Fanduel because I only tend to make slight tweaks because the value doesn't mean as much on Fanduel as it does on DraftKings. So on those kind of days, I tend to do really well. We had the same example last Wednesday when I won the 30K. And one of these days we should do a little show on this because I actually posted that exact lineup with one pivot once they announced the different starters, and that was the lineup that won everything. This is how you play a script. You come up with a game theory that the last Thursday before whatever the All-Star break that I thought the Clippers were going to absolutely murder the Rockets on the back-to-back and all that stuff. You play a script and you try to make sense of it. And last night, I did not think that Charlotte was going to come close to to Milwaukee, but if they did, you give yourself a chance. You know what I mean? So you try to play a script like that, and that's all you can do, in my opinion. And sometimes, anyway, if that makes
It's
sense.
an interesting slate tonight because you have 4 games or 5 games that all kind of bunched together, and then you have the highest scoring player on the slate, on an island game, at 10 o'clock, and maybe the second highest scorer on the slate in the same game, so it's a very and then not to mention that the 8 o'clock game is going to have Curry and the Minnesota guys, so it's interesting to see what happens after the 7:30. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be not the day for the big T lineup, I think, to come through. meaning the 9 guy stack in game 1. Hope it holds.
Yeah. Well, he did. He last night he just passed me in the 222. I almost won the single entry.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I ended up in 6th, but it was.
He usually never passes anybody. He's usually like
no.
Usually a front runner.
because all the games were at 7 and 8 o'clock. He didn't have the thing. Literally, Big T is an awesome DFS player, regardless of our personal things and, whatever. But he's an awesome DFS player. But one of the things that I think it's like a giant leak, but it's not really a leak when it wins 3 times a year. You know what I mean? And that's all you need to do really to be profitable is win that tournament 3 times a year. And then basically, get, I don't know, lose 20% the rest of the time.
Right.
And he stacks games and he believes in a lot of the same things that I believe in, which is 6.2% of games going to overtime. And he stacks like that. Anyway, well, we can get into it because this is the kind of slate where I think we might want to try to game stack a couple things. So let's get into it and talk it over, because I do like this slate. I haven't done a ton of research on it yet so far, but I think that it's a really good slate to there's a lot of different options. And just like yesterday, there's a lot of different really good options that you're going to have to, it was hard to play Halliburton. You couldn't play Halliburton, Shea, and Giannis last night, for example. This is a similar type of slate. And maybe we don't need the high spend ups, but there's a lot of good players in the mid tier. And I think that's probably going to be my route tonight. Although it is very tempting on a nationally televised game to play the Luka LeBron thing. So we'll get into it. Let's talk it through. What are your sort of initial thoughts before we jump into the game by game?
Well, let's go right into the game by game, because the first game of the night is where most of the value is, at least at this early stage. You have Washington against Detroit, and you have Daniel Gafford at 3,600 at center, projecting, I guess, to start, and he is projecting as clearly the best overall value play on the slate and projecting it over 7x. So that's kind of where you have to start. And he's also going to be, I would say, in the bigger buy-ins, like well over 60% owned, I would imagine. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're getting also secondary values as well. I'm talking about DraftKings for openers. KCP is projecting well at 4,400. I personally have Rui projecting pretty nicely at 3,400 as well. So that's where you're starting this whole night off with these 3, this Washington value. Detroit, I don't really have too much to kind of start off with. I guess you could always play Cade Cunningham, and like you said, if you do want to go ahead and stack some Washingtons or whatever, you can do it. But Kelly Olynyk, he had a nice game winner the other day. And you just got to see who's playing, because I think with all those other guys back, I don't think Kelly is quite as viable. But I'm kind of off the Detroit guys, but it's kind of hard to ignore Gafford as kind of the linchpin for the slate. And what you could do is go back to Kuzma, right? Kuzma, I think, is better on Fanduel, I think. I'm not sure. He's good on both sides, but I think he's better on one side than the other. So, yeah, I mean, this is where you start with these Washington guys.
Yeah, I feel you on the Washington side. I'm going to ride Cade Cunningham until he's 9K. I understand that not all the results are going to be perfect. I think that there is massive upside that's not being realized. And I think that on FanDuel is more where I would want to play Cade, but I don't think it's going to be anything, revolutionary or anything. I just think that they're going to ride this kid. He's awesome. Coming off the rookie second year, the MVP of that game and everything, and the big all-star weekend. I know he didn't have the monster game the first time out against Charlotte, and it was a great matchup, but I do like Cade for starters, especially on FanDuel. And I don't really think I want to mess with the rest of Detroit. I'm okay with Isaiah Stewart. I'm always okay with Isaiah Stewart at 5K if the ownership does slant away from him, especially like we'll see about Bagley and Frank Jackson, because that could determine a lot. But so I like the Gafford play. It's such an obvious play. You know, it's not my favorite thing to just play the obvious thing. I always want to try to find a way around it. This is a tough one to get around because you got a team that's going to have a big out there. They don't really, you know, they can play Thomas Bryant, but they tend to just want to keep his minutes down. And I think they actually believe in Thomas Bryant for the future. Thomas Bryant had the 124-minute game, which made me think that he was going to trend in more the direction we could play him. I do think he's an interesting pivot away from Gafford. Like Gafford picks up 2 quick fouls. Maybe Brian is really good and he gets 24 minutes and maybe he puts up 35 fantasy points. That's the way you fade Gafford. I don't really know the logic of like at first look that he's just an obviously great play. I think that KCP is, I can't ignore it anymore. Like the usage is actually good. He's a part of like the offense, which is almost never been the case for him. I don't know how much of him I really want to play at this ownership, but I'm definitely intrigued. And then Kyle Kuzma, if people aren't going to play Kyle Kuzma, who is everything to this team, and when I say people aren't going to play him, I mean 15 to 25%. I just think like that's way too low. Like he's a 9,200 guy who should be treated the same way that Shea should have been treated last night to some extent. He is all the usage. Now he'll have the weird game, which he had against Brooklyn, and they even won that game. But you look at 3 of his last 4, he's over 58 fantasy points. The usage is through the roof. And on top of it, he rebounds the hell out of the ball. He's been shooting well. I sort of like Kuzma as my next favorite play behind Gafford. And then the Rui, the KCP, without Washington really truly like they're sort of in between playing for a playoff spot or not. I don't know. I just feel like I'm going to kind of probably ignore some of the rest, whether that hurts me or not. We'll see. But I'm probably going to focus on Gafford and Kuzma as my main plays. And Denny Avdia, you know, I'll say this right now. Maybe it's going to sound like a ridiculous thing to say, but I think he's a real basketball player. Like I think he's a guy who's going to be around the league for the next 12 years. And whatever that means, I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but he's 4,900. And I think he's actually a guy they want to get more and more run the second half of the season. So I'm going to take all those guys and mix them up, but mostly it's going to be Gafford. And like I said, the projections are there for a reason and they make sense. There probably will be other stuff we hear throughout the day that will make us go other directions too. But Gafford, no matter what, is going to be popular. And I think for good reason. The only thing that's weird to me is that Thomas Bryant is their guy. Daniel Gafford is not their guy. This is just because Bryant's coming back from an injury and they're babying him, in my opinion. And Gafford has been incredibly efficient. It's easy to do when you only shoot shots from 2 feet away. I just, at 3,600, I like him. I think that the wise thing to do is, like I said, if you want to make a big, bold move, just right off the bat, play him on FanDuel, don't play him on DraftKings because of the price difference. That would be my first thought. At the same time, it's going to be hard for me not to put him in my first lineup on DraftKings. So tough fade for Gafford for me. I mean, tough to fade. I'm going to play Gafford, even though I want to try to find reasons not to.
Well, you could just not play Luka if you want to do that.
No, and that's fair. But like it's just, how do I get, if I can get 30 fantasy points, and not only that, like I really feel like his median score here could be much higher. I also feel like there is a path, you know, they could play Rui at the 5, they could play Thomas Bryant, they could eat up between them 35 minutes at the 5, and maybe Gafford gets in foul trouble, which we've seen before. That's really your only argument though. Like what is his fail path? Even if he plays like 20 minutes, like literally 20 minutes, I think he's probably putting up over 20 fantasy points, which is at least at early look good enough. So as of right now, I'm planning to play Gafford, but I want to try to find a reason not to. So maybe we can find one. I don't have one right now. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta-Boston game?
So if you're going to try to make a case for, for kind of middling type builds, I mean, these are the guys you have to kind of consider, like these guys like Trae Young at 10K,
Yep.
It's and I don't even know if it's a tough matchup or not anymore with Boston. I still think that Boston plays. Go ahead.
They've been the best defensive team by a long shot.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Boston still, they still play really, really good team defense, and it's tough to play against that type of scheme. It just always is. So Trey's rating is a good play. I don't know if that's just what I'm going to do. The other guys on Atlanta, I don't think I'm going to play Capella at 6K. But I always am between Hunter and Bogdanovich for these secondary Atlanta guys. Like Danilo Gallinari is projecting to be the best kind of point per dollar Atlanta guy. Especially, with Collins out, I guess it makes sense. He's just never a guy that I get to or I enjoy getting to. Hunter, like you point out quite frequently, I mean, he's always just kind of a fine play. He'll play defense, he'll get rebounds, he'll never take over a game. If he stays out of foul trouble, whatever it is, he'll get 30 fantasy points, and just you'll have to decide for yourself whether that's good enough on his good days. Where Bogdanovich, I mean, he'll drive you freaking bananas sometimes, but he has legitimate 50-point upside, like every day. So I think between the two of those, I'm kind of sold by you. I mean, every day we have this discussion, and when I say I like Hunter this, you're like, yeah, I just kind of prefer Bogdan if I'm going to play any of these guys. And I think I agree with you today. So that's why I'm Atlanta and Boston. I mean, Tatum's another guy that, again, he's like in that same price range as Tatum. As Trae Young. And I kind of would rather play Tatum than Trae Young for some reason, just because he's playing against Atlanta, right? And Trae's playing against Boston. So I like Tatum from the Boston side, and in summary, so I like Tatum from the Boston side. Gallinari's going to project well, but I don't know if I'm going to play that. Hunter's going to project well. I don't know if I'm going to play that. Maybe Bogdanovich will be kind of a flyer that I take a shot on.
Yeah, I get it. I think that, so on FanDuel, I think that Jaylen Brown is really hard to ignore at 8K on this kind of a matchup. You get the huge boost to Atlanta. My first thoughts are this game, I just want to bet the unders in Boston games. Like, look, I'm going to be wrong sometimes with my over and unders, and I'm going to be wrong with my Cleveland, plus 3.5 last night when it was a tie game with 10 seconds to go or whatever. There's variance, obviously, but I really feel like this game feels, it's a weird to see a Boston in this kind of a total game, but I get it when you're playing Atlanta. I'm really struggling because I have a bunch of different guys who I think are similar. So what I do in those situations are just play the lowest owned one. If you have a really good defense that's going to force you to keep moving the ball, and Atlanta, as much as they've struggled this year, I do believe that they have team chemistry, they move the ball, they do the right things. And the weird play for me tonight is going to be Kevin Huerter. No one's going to play Kevin Huerter. I just think that this is when you face good defenses and they force you to keep moving the ball, he's going to have at least some open shot looks because they're going to try to stop Trey. They're going to try to stop Bogdanovich, and they're going to try to stop Gallinari. All of those guys are very fine plays. I'm not going to argue against any of them, but I kind of like the idea of just playing Kevin Huerter, who's going to be on the court all this time. And if you're really good at stopping the 1, 2, and 3 options, doesn't the fourth option, who's going to play 35 minutes or so, if the game is close, seems somewhat appealing? That's for me, my first weird thought about Atlanta is that I kind of want to play Kevin Huerter, which is strange. And I like Jaylen Brown. And I honestly like Al Horford. It doesn't feel great with Horford and Smart here, but it's just a great matchup. And I think I kind of want to take some shots here. So I'll be mixing in the Boston guys. I'll be more ready at 6 to talk about exactly which ones, because I don't really know what I want to do with this game. Everybody has a meh rating for me. They're all fine, but I don't feel in love with anyone except for I like the Jaylen Brown upside, especially on a site like FanDuel, where you get a couple of those steals, a couple blocks, and all of a sudden, that those extra, 12 fantasy points, which are very possible in this kind of a matchup, they mean a lot. That 40 turning into a 52 is a big difference. And I think this is a really good spot to try and play a guy like Jaylen Brown on FanDuel, more so than DraftKings. I agree with you, what you said about Tatum. It feels weird to play Tatum at the same price as Trae Young, but this game has a lot of stuff. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm sort of, my brain is trained to stay away from Boston. And I don't think that's the wrong thing to do. So I'm kind of going to overlook that one and focus more on this next game, because that's going to be potentially the game. So what do you think we do in this Brooklyn-Toronto game?
Well, first of all, what we do is we bet Brooklyn plus the 8.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I actually posted it in the Discord, and I actually posted it on your Google sheet. That's why I wanted to get the thing, whatever. I mean, Brooklyn,
the classic Sheets move.
They lost at home by 30 and to the same team, and now they're going into Toronto. Not only that, but Steve Nash is into the protocols, and he's not even going to be coaching. So you got Jacques Vaughn, who's going to be saddled with the task of handling this shit show, and that's all. That's good enough for me. So I'm going to be betting Brooklyn plus the 8. You could probably even weigh. You'll probably get 8.5 or whatever it is. And if you get news that all these Toronto guys are, if like get news that Van Vliet is actually going to play, you might even get more than 8.5. Yeah. Well, so I kind of wait on that, and I'm going to be betting Brooklyn there. And with respect to the fantasy thing, like I just kind of alluded to, you have to see who's playing. You know, if Van Vliet is back, you could probably play him, right? If he's out, you could go back and play the same dudes from yesterday. You could play Malachi Flynn specifically. You could play Scotty Barnes, and you can go right back to Siakam. And I don't know what happened with the bigs. With I don't know who produced for the bigs over there. But you know, everybody's in play against Brooklyn all the time. You know. And with respect to Brooklyn, same thing. I don't know who's playing, but I would wait to the end, see who's starting. And one thing is that Jacques Vaughn, I don't know if he's ever coached the game. You know what I mean? He may have.
No, he did. And by the way, he's a very, very good coach.
I don't want a really good coach. What I want is a guy who really wants to win. You know what I mean? I want a guy who's going to play his freaking dudes who are playing well. You know what I mean? At all costs. So I want to play guys who are starting if I can. I'd like to play Seth Curry, I guess. I'd like to play James Johnson if you start. I don't know. I really didn't do a lot of good work on the Brooklyn team yesterday with who was playing and stuff like that. So I don't really know exactly what they did. But
throw it out in my opinion.
What's that?
Throw it out in my opinion. That game.
Okay. Yeah, but look, Steve Nash is going to tell him who to start. You know what I mean? So I think that I agree with you. I think that if Van Vliet doesn't play, for example, then the game rates to be a little bit closer, which makes it more stackable. And if Van Vliet doesn't play, those other guys, are firmly in play. And like you said, you got to figure out who to play on the Brooklyn side. I guess Seth Curry, but I'll leave that to you for now.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the early ownership projections are kind of a little bit alarming. Like Patty Mills has busted every slate. And again, I still bet by the time that Locke comes around. I mean, this guy hasn't put up 10 fantasy points in the last 3 times he's played. He's also shot a combined, this is not a joke, he's 1 for his last 20 from the floor.
Ouch.
Okay. That's rough. And over a 3-game period. I am absolutely, I don't know if I'm with you that Brooklyn covers, because I do think that traveling to Canada and then not having fans in the stadium is a sort of just like a weird thing. But at the same time, getting blown out by 30, and it's not that far, by the way, it's just a trip to Canada. And I don't believe that this is who Brooklyn is going to end up rolling out there. I wouldn't be surprised to see some major changes. And they got so thrashed and throttled last night. They're still trying to figure out their all the studs lineup. And maybe Cam Thomas is something we could do. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this game. I just know I'm going to want every piece of it. I don't care that Siakam put up 30 fantasy points in a 33-point blowout, and he was 2 for 14 from the floor. He is going to not be 2 for 14 from the floor but maybe a few times a year. He was 3 for 13 last week, so kind of weird to say that, but Siakam is incredibly efficient. It's a great matchup. I don't care. It's not like people are like, oh, Siakam sucked and all this stuff. I'm like, no, they were up by 37 million points. And Scotty Barnes was just going Scotty Barnes nuts. So I'm kind of inclined to sort of go the other way. I still want to play Scotty Barnes, whether Van Vliet plays or not. I think he's too cheap. And I really think it's a young guy realizing his potential. I want all the pieces of this game. I don't know which order exactly I'm going to have them again. It's going to be wait till 6. I need to know about Van Vliet playing. But if Van Vliet plays, I'm going to be into that play. It kind of would be shocking to me if they did play him after winning by 33. And you got the back-to-back, and he did play the other day. So I think their plan was to play him just in this matchup. But I don't know, man. I'm very interested in James Johnson going back to Toronto. I know he was terrible and great. I hope that no one plays him. I hope that no one plays Bruce Brown, although he was pretty good last night. I hope that no one plays Patty Mills. I hope that no one plays Steph Curry. I would be surprised. And I called this early on our show yesterday, and it was one of my plays of the day was Brogdon. But at the same time, I was like, are they really going to play Brogdon in a meaningless back-to-back in a 3 out of 4? I don't think so.
Right.
They didn't. This is a similar type of situation because Brooklyn doesn't need to do anything. All they need to do is get, maybe they want to get out of the play-in game. I guess that's their only goal. This is a pretty weak lineup that they're running out there, and Toronto should win this game by more than 8. But at the same time, like you said, we've seen this over and over again, Sheets. It happens every time. If team wins by 30, you have them back-to-back on the same team, it's always a tight game. It always is. This is my first stackable game of the night, and I want all the pieces of it. I also don't think it's going to be overly owned, which is kind of weird, considering that we saw Toronto basically do everything they wanted to do offensively last night. So I think by the end of the day, we're going to be talking about Andre Drummond as an awesome play, even at 6,900, because that whole game has to be a throwaway yesterday. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is a legitimate questionable whether he'll play. I think Goran Dragic is a legitimate questionable whether he'll play or not, even though he just played for this team. So maybe he wants to, I don't know. They're only playing him 14 minutes anyway. I really want all this game. I need to see who's playing before I decide who to make. And I know that sucks for early looks, but you can just circle Toronto and Brooklyn as if this game stays close, you're going to get 4 guys who are going to smash, in my opinion, regardless of who plays or who doesn't. I don't see another way around it. You want to talk about the Clippers in Houston? Because this is
here's another one. It's a little different dynamic. It's another back-to-back. The same teams played yesterday.
These guys didn't play yesterday.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, they played. They were my big slate winner. I remember I said on air with you. I said I need the Clippers to win by 35 or more. And
a couple of days ago. Okay, right.
Yeah, it was right before the thing. That was the night I won because I played the angle of the Clippers are going to. Houston had just played their best game and almost beat Phoenix in Phoenix. And then they go to the LA on the back-to-back. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to play Hartenstein and Coffee. And that's what got it done for me because I wanted to play all the big studs. This is the Clippers are tough because Ty Lue, I mean, look, you want to talk about coach of the year, like guys, and I understand he's not going to be, but he mixes his rotations. It sucks for DFS, but it's wonderful for real coaching. And I still think Luke Kennard is too cheap. I think that there is a 5-point fantasy path for him, and I think there's a 40 fantasy point path for him in this kind of a matchup. There's a lot you can do with this game. So actually, you know what? Tell me about your projection thoughts, and then I'll talk about a little bit what I think.
Yeah, really, really tough fade. Honestly, on FanDuel, they still have Reggie Jackson's really super duper cheap over there. He's going to be really popular at 7K. He's basically. I don't know about Ty Lue taking, distributing usage or whatever it is, but it seems like Reggie Jackson has like an 85% usage rate whenever he's in the game. So that's my first thought is on FanDuel, Reggie Jackson. With respect to DraftKings, now again, we got to watch for news because Kevin Porter Jr. was held out of the last game, so that's interesting. And Eric Gordon, despite playing 30x minutes, I mean, he did nothing. But if he comes back again, you give me 30x minutes from Eric Gordon, he's probably going to be somebody I look at, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is on the Houston side. I know you don't like to play him, but I guess more of a FanDuel play too. Is I do like Christian Wood a little bit today. So for me, Houston, Christian Wood, LAC, whatchamacallit, Reggie Jackson, specifically on FanDuel. And I would go back to the I think to the Amir Coffey for the Clippers as well. And also, you know, he's again, he hasn't really done too much in the last couple of years, but Covington at 4,100, he's cheap also. So Marcus Morris, 1,500. Maybe this game is kind of sneaky to play this. So I don't know. So again, Christian Wood, maybe some Eric Gordon as a flyer, and the cheapos on the Clippers that I mentioned.
Yeah, I kind of wish this was the 2,500 slate, because the two teams, and it's not because I live in LA that I know the Clippers so well. It's that if you find the right Clippers, you're gonna win like all the time. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You could just have a rule where you play two Clippers on these shorter slates, and it almost doesn't even matter which ones, because it could be any of them. It's anyone's best guess. The guy who I actually lean towards is Batum.
Okay.
I think that he's a tremendous play, and I think that he's had some time off. I think that the 22 minutes projection for him is very conservative. I think that everybody else, they did price up on DraftKings, but I agree with you that Reggie Jackson is too cheap on FanDuel. I don't think he's too cheap by enough to where he should be 50% owned. Okay. There is absolutely a bust path for Reggie Jackson in every game that he plays. Now, it's the perfect matchup. All these things, I'd be talking and screaming from the rafters if no one was going to play him. But if he's going to be 8,200 and 25% owned, which is what my early projections have him at, I just don't. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pass on that one. I understand I might be giving up on what? What am I giving up on though? When does Reggie Jackson score 50 fantasy points like with regularity? When is the last time he scored 50 fantasy points? Has he? He's 8,200, and that's sort of what I want to have at least as an upside. And right. Even with all of these guys out, when all these guys weren't playing, he wasn't even doing this. And by the way, with Ty Lue is such a good coach, as I was saying, they have options. There's a million different ways they can go in this game. Zubac, Hartenstein is a little, getting to the point where it's hard to play him. But Zubac, Hartenstein, Mann, Batum, Jackson, Kennard, Morris, Coffey, Covington, all of these guys are tremendously in play. And I think what I'll do is probably hope the game stays close. And if I do that, I kind of want to play Marcus Morris and Covington as my two favorites. But I think you want to mix Clippers in every day. It's a little bit what I was talking about with the Miami guys, but it's even more so because these guys who are all projected for 20 odd minutes, the Clippers, they average out to that because they'll play 16 minutes one night and 30 the other nights. It just depends. They play the hot hand thing. They're battling at over 500 without two of the best 15 players in the world. And they're going to just rotate and go with whoever's hot. They're not trying to equal out to everybody playing 25 minutes. They're just doing the best with what they've got. And when that happens, you've got a guy like Kennard who could shoot himself into 33 minutes. And if he does, by the way, and if he's that hot, he's going to put up 40 fantasy points. Robert Covington could put up 35 fantasy points in this game. Amir Coffey is less on my radar today because I think it takes a little more for him to get there. And he's not like the most active guy in the world when all these other guys are playing. He had some really big games when these guys were out. But this is a spot you want to try to get right. And it's hard to know who to prioritize for the Clippers. But for me, my first look is Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Luke Kennard, and then try to fade Reggie Jackson, even on FanDuel. Oh, and Batum, of course. I love Terrence Mann in this matchup. Love Terrence Mann, but 6,200, not going to be able to do it, I don't think. You know what I mean? He would have, by the way, probably gotten there. I mean, he took 5 shots. They played Houston. They won by 46 or whatever. He was going to play 36 minutes in that game probably. And he's being projected for 32 minutes. He'll play 36 minutes if this game is close, if he's playing reasonably well. And the one thing with him is he always plays defense. All these other guys are sort of hit and miss, except for Covington and him. So, but I think Batum is the awesome sneaky play that you roll with here. And it just, look, ignore game logs. They've played in some really weird games lately. They also had the 2 and 3 nights, whatever. They played the Lakers, and then Batum didn't play well, so they benched him, not benched him, but like that's just what happens with the Clippers. But all of these minutes have massive upside and massive downside. So I'm going to take the guys who I feel the best about the upside, and that's Covington, Morris, Kennard, and Batum. I don't know exactly how I'm going to have those guys rated, but at first look, they're the guys I want. And it's going to depend on what happens with Kevin Porter Jr. I love Christian Wood on FanDuel no matter what. He had a terrible game in the last time out. Christian Wood, for everybody out there who thinks that he's a good basketball player, he's Andre Drummond light. He's a terrible basketball player. In all reality, he makes every team worse. He's never been on a team that wasn't 20 games under 500. That was his best year. And that's the way he's going to go. But for fantasy, can we get 50 out of him in a matchup like this? Yeah, of course we can. And he's 7,200 on FanDuel. I'm not going to play him on DraftKings at 8,100. But I do like the other pieces if Kevin Porter's out. I like your Eric Gordon point. If you're going to play Eric Gordon 30 minutes, you're going to give yourself at least a chance. Hey, he makes his first 2 threes. You know what happens? He probably takes 10 threes. If he takes 10 threes, maybe he makes 4 of them. That means he's also on the court for 30 plus minutes, and he's probably doing enough to get you 30 plus fantasy points. If he doesn't make those threes, yeah, he can sort of disappear into the background. But this feels more like a FanDuel type of build for me, because they fit in a little bit easier over there than they do on DraftKings. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, sorry, that's a lot of stuff there.
On the other hand, as opposed to Christian Wood, who could be a good fantasy player, but it's kind of an awful basketball player, let's talk about Steph Curry for a minute. As we discuss this game, so Steph Curry is a tremendous basketball player, one of the best basketball players I've ever seen. And their team is, they get Clay back, whatever it is, they can make a serious run for the title, and yet he busts every game at his price. The last game they played was really one of Golden State's worst performances. They were rolling over Dallas like it was nothing, and then they just completely fell apart.
Yeah, Dallas will do that to you. For some reason, that happens a ton with Dallas. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
And he did get his 38 minutes, and he got 53 fantasy points, which was shockingly his best fantasy point production in like a while. Which,
other than the All-Star game, of course.
Right, which is not going to get there. And then I'm trying to look back because it seems like the type of game that this environment that you'd want to. This would be the type of bounce back game for Golden State in general. But I'm trying hard to find a game that I'll even take. And then I'm like looking. He was 3 for 10 from 3, 2 for 7. And I look at the game where he got really hot from 3. He was 8 for 13, and that one he only had 40 fantasy points. It's a weird guy's a weird fantasy play nowadays. And you just can't play him. I think that's going to be my conclusion. And he's going to be lower owned, I guess. But you're going to tell me, okay, this is a kind of stupid thing to say, but what odds can I get that Steph Curry is outscored by, I don't know, Fred VanVleet if he plays?
How about Anthony Edwards on the other side?
Or I was going to say Cade Cunningham. You know what I mean? Like these guys in the 7,500 range. So I just can't do it. I do think, and this is kind of it's funny, like when you think about this game, like who you could possibly play from Golden State. I top-rated guy in Golden State, and if you want to pivot off of Gafford, maybe you could play Kevon Looney. I know you like playing guys against Cat. This is not exactly what you're looking for against Cat, but he's all right. Otto Porter looks good at 4,100. So if you want to just play Golden State and get in the bounce back type game, and you don't feel like playing Curry, maybe one of those two guys. And on the Minnesota side, I'll defer to you. It's the same argument always. You have these 3 guys who are going to always project well, and then you're going to have between Russell and Edwards and Cat, and then you have Beverly, who he's getting up for this game, right? He's getting up for this game. And he's always kind of a safe play if he's going to get 30 minutes at 5K. And I see him project for 28 minutes. I don't believe a word of that. I mean, I think we'll play more than that. Yeah, I'd like to play more of this game. I just don't know exactly what to do.
I like this game because both teams have a ton to play for. Like everybody thinks the All-Star break is halfway through the season. It's really 3/4 of the way. We're 3/4 of the way in. Golden State has an opening now. You've got Phoenix losing 2 in a row with no Chris Paul for the next 2 months. They've got a chance to win the West, and I think that matters to them a lot. Yeah, it doesn't matter to where they're going to overforce Klay Thompson and they're going to force Draymond coming back, but it means that they're going to put their best effort. And honestly, in a close game, I kind of like if Curry is really low owned, I'll be all over that play. It's too easy of a play. It's like the perfect situation. And I understand against Dallas, like, yeah, he didn't, but like the Portland game, for example, which was a smash, they would have won that. I mean, Steph Curry was going to put up like 75, 85.
That's true. That's true.
That's the only problem with him, though. Like when he goes nuts, it's hard for the other team to compete. Minnesota needs to win all their games. They don't want to be in the play-in game. This is the best year they've had since Jimmy Butler days.
Yeah.
This is a really good spot. My favorite play, maybe on the slate for tournaments. Again, this is for tournaments. Do not build a cash game lineup with Anthony Edwards in your lineup, unless we hear somebody's resting. But absolutely play the hell out of Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell. Those are guys you want to be, in my opinion, I think you want to be like 40% of each of them, maybe higher.
You want to play them together?
I kind of am open to it because of the game environment. And this is a really good pivot off of some other spots. Like Anthony Edwards, I mean, right now, his projection is going to make him like 5 or 6% owned. And I don't care how many times he busts. You want to know his last 3 games? This is very typical Anthony Edwards. His last 3 games versus Golden State, he put up 49.5, he put up 19, and he put up 67. This is who he is, okay? He's also an awesome defender, so they tend to put him on like the best wing player. He's not going to guard Steph because Beverly will. So he's not going to have to worry as much about defense. Now, yeah, there's other guys like, you've got the Wiggins in there and all that stuff. I really want pieces of this game. You also got a Wiggins revenge game in this. I kind of am inclined to go with a little Wiggins and Edwards at first look, and a little bit of Russell. You can get a little double revenge here. Get the Wiggins and Russell back at the revenge narrative there, and it also is not just a revenge narrative. It works. It makes sense. And it's weird to me that no one was on Patrick Beverly last night. And I mentioned that on our show. I didn't get to him much either because there was the Goodwin and there was all the stuff. And, I don't know, Beverly's minutes tend to sometimes be in flux. If he doesn't foul out or get into serious foul trouble, which, by the way, I bet he does. I would bet anything that he gets 2 fouls in the first quarter. I would be really surprised if there's a way you can make that bet. Beverly will come out and try to harass Steph. It won't work. He does a great job, by the way. I credit a lot of Minnesota's triumphs this year to Pat Beverly. I think that sort of mindset sort of changed the complexion of this team and helped D'Angelo Russell become, I can't believe I'm saying this, but a good basketball player.
Ooh, that's rough. That's a rough comment.
Look, he's become a much, much better basketball player. And I really believe that Patrick Beverly is a big part of the reason he actually defends. This guy was the worst. This guy was Trae Young, but he's just a little taller. And he actually plays defense now. I love this game. I'm very into the slate tonight. I have nothing else to do but watch basketball, study. I've got our conference call for the site, and we're going to do all that stuff. I'm going to be just completely focused, but I really, really like this slate, and I really like the idea of playing Anthony Edwards as a priority play. I think that this is a really just an awesome spot to get him. And by the way, Golden State without Draymond, they don't really smash people. And I love what you said about Looney too. I think Looney's minutes projected at 26, that could easily be 34. I know he generally in the 26 range. Some of that has to do with blowouts. Some of that's different situations. You're going to want a body to go up with Cat, and they really don't have another one except for Bjelica, who, by the way, it's a revenge game for him as well. If he plays, he's even questionable. If he doesn't play, we want all of this. We want Looney. We want we want a little bit of Moody, who's a weird one, that his price is hard to ignore because he's going to play minutes. We want some Gary Payton. We're going to want some Steph Curry. But if Bjelica does play, I think we want a little Bjelica, a little Looney, and a lot of Steph and Wiggins. If they're low, if Steph is low owned. But my guess is that Steph doesn't get crazy low owned. He has to be sub 10%. If he's sub 10%, I'll be at 30%. I just think the matchup is too good for me to ignore. And I love the Beverly, Russell, Edwards. And by the way, Towns is absolutely no slouch either here. So I like everybody on the Minnesota side. I don't think we need to worry about them eating into each other because one of them gets there. I will be playing multiple lineups. If you're playing only one, boy, I would tell you to gamble it all and go for Edwards or Russell, and maybe skip Cat in that one. But I really don't see myself playing a lineup without a Minnesota player on it tonight.
Just to throw another one into the mix, on FanDuel, Jarrod Vanderbilt is 4,200
Yep.
At power forward, and Beverly is only 4,700 on FanDuel.
I agree. The only issue I have with Vanderbilt on a slate like this is, well, actually, you know what's nice is that he's not going to be as owned as he was even last night, which is weird because this is like a much different slate and it's a smaller slate. But Vanderbilt, where he's going to really make his bones is mostly going to be from steals and blocks. I know it hasn't been that way as much in the recent trends. That's why we like him on FanDuel in general. And he's 4,500 on DraftKings, so he's totally reasonable. But I just think that just be a little bit wary because Golden State doesn't turn the ball over a ton. They're very, very clean. It's not a matchup that I would naturally gravitate towards Vanderbilt regardless of projections, but I probably will fit him in the mix just because he's a value play that makes sense. I really like this game too. These 3 games right there. I love all 3 of these. And this last game we're going to get into, my instant thought is bet the under on this Laker game. I just think it's going to hit the under. Dallas plays slow. The Lakers have started to play a little bit slower, I don't even know. It's not even slower. They've just been dreadful, to be honest. What are your thoughts on this Dallas Laker game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could play. I think you could play some lineups with Luka and LeBron together. It's certainly pure. Certainly makes a lot of sense, and I'll definitely try some of that. Before we leave that other game, by the way, I would like to also emphasize that on FanDuel, also you have Wiggins at only 5,500 over there.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, Edwards is only 6,500 over there also. So
yeah, I would encourage people to play them on DraftKings and just forget about it. Like if they bust, they're going to bust on either site.
That's a good.
You know what I mean? Like just play them where they're lower owned, and because it doesn't, for these kind of guys, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Edwards is going to be 20% owned on FanDuel at the moment, and I have him projected at 4.5% on DraftKings. Right. Just who cares about the 800, especially for a site that benefits him better, like because of the 3-point bonus. Anyway, but I agree with you. They stand out as obvious plays, and I'm not saying I won't play them over there. I'm just saying that I would rather play them on the site where they're going to be lower owned.
The other guys on the Lakers, I would throw in, Carmelo's, good enough, I guess. I just they're better plays, like you said. I mean, if I knew this was going to be like a faster pace environment, I'd play some more guys in this game. Maybe take a shot at Jalen Brunson coming off a bad game, something like that. But I think that the only way that this game delivers is if both LeBron and Luka go off, and Luka just goes off every game. So he's going to be the most popular player. I mean, except Gafford, right?
No, I think he might even be close to Gafford.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to project for just too many fantasy points on a night where very few people are going to project for that many fantasy points against a team that gives up a lot of them. So I mean, it's a tough fade. And I'll probably be with the field. I'll probably have 50% of plus of him. And if I played like a couple of big lineups, for example, I probably would fade him. You know what I mean? Like if today were the 2,500, I would almost definitely fade.
Yep.
Yep. And look, we went over in only a 6-game slate, maybe 7 or 8 mid-range guys that could go nuts, and they probably won't, but they could. And that's the whole point, So I probably would not, I would probably try to avoid the Luka Gafford pairing. You know what I mean? Like, unless, you had a kind of a real cool, I don't know, Houston, LA C, stack around it or something like that. But make no mistake, Luka does project to be a really, really good play. I don't really like much else on the Mavericks, and with the exception of what's his name, the Lakers, Carmelo. I don't have too much either. I don't know about. I'm not getting to Dwight Howard today. Should I?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically the question is, will Dwight Howard get 10 real life points? Because if he gets 10 real life points and they play him in the role that they've been playing him, that means 30 automatically, because that's a double-double. He's going to get 1 million rebounds in this matchup. Like every rebound that's out there, Dwight Howard will get if he starts. And that 22 minutes, you can throw that out the window. Like that could be 30 minutes, that could be 10 minutes. It's a high variance play, but at the ownership that he's getting right now, I would be inclined to call him a priority. Actually, Dallas's weakness is their size, and we know that one thing Dwight Howard has always been able to do
is take advantage of that.
Yeah, just rebound the hell out of the ball. There's a lot of plays in this game. I would be inclined. My first natural instinct is to try to fade Luka. I think he probably puts up a monster game here. I just look on FanDuel, he's 10-8. He does turn the ball over an insane amount. Like he had 9 turnovers in the last game he played. That does hurt on FanDuel. When you lose 9 points, it really hurts. But he's 10-8, and that's going to make him really appealing. I would be more inclined to try to play him on DraftKings, where at least he'll be a little lower owned, but still really high owned. I would probably be below the field on Luka personally, and play these mid-range guys like we were talking about. Now, if a bunch of value opens up and we get like automatic 3K value, and maybe 2 of the Nets are sitting, and we like to stack that game, you could get a Brooklyn Toronto stack potentially, and then Vliet's out. You can get a Brooklyn Toronto stack and play Luka and LeBron. That sounds pretty good. They need to win games, man. The Lakers are, it's dreadful. And by the way, LeBron, the other night, like you can look at all these advanced numbers and, he shot 13 for 23 and he did this and that. I'm like, he was minus 15. Westbrook, meanwhile, plus 10, but not speaking that Westbrook's this amazing. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of weird narratives and stuff and weird ways that this game looks. I think Westbrook is going to be in all of my, I hate the way they're using him. I love the coach, but I think that he's doing a terrible job with this particular roster. I will be all over Westbrook on FanDuel. I will be all over Dwight Howard on both sites, assuming that he starts. The problem is we won't know that till hours later. So you want to make sure to have some exposure to this game. I don't really think if I'm not going to play Luka, what's the route for Luka not getting? I'm not worried about Luka getting 60. I'm worried about Luka getting 75 or 80. So if he doesn't get 75 or 80, who's the guys who maybe take away from it? Maybe you could consider Jalen Brunson. Maybe Maxi Kleber gets hot. I kind of like the idea of just going a little different and trying to balance out your builds with some of these medium plays rather than spending all the way up for Luka. But again, I don't think by any means Luka is not going to have a wonderful game. And I'm not saying I'm going to fade him. I'm just going to be below the field probably at first glance, because it's rough. And if I play Luka, that's probably where I will play LeBron or Westbrook. And on FanDuel, I think I'll play Westbrook with Luka. On DraftKings, I think it would be LeBron and Luka if I can get enough value elsewhere. But overall, I don't see this as being the automatic lock spot that it was before, at 12K for Luka. I do love him. He's going to be probably great, but I think that we can find other ways to build. I mean, Giannis was great last night on FanDuel. I know that there was a blowout and everything, but on DraftKings, you didn't need Giannis to win tournaments last night. Yeah, sure, he was fine if you got all the value right, but I don't know. Unless a ton of value opens up, I don't see myself using Luka as much as the field is going to.
I want to look at something real quick on Prize Picks. I couldn't find the prop on the actual on DraftKings. I wanted to look at rebounds and see if I can get something on Dwight Howard. They have no props on him. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, wait, they have none for Howard?
Yeah.
Because they can't. They don't know what the role is because they got smashed and in the last game, and I don't think they know from game to game. Like that's the problem with Howard tonight. Like there's a good chance that if he doesn't start, he may not even play. Like that's actually a possibility. But if he does start, he probably has 8 rebounds in the first quarter to go with whatever he gets putback wise or lob wise. It's an interesting game. It's just it feels kind of dirty to me to play. And LeBron won't be chalky, but Luka will be really chalky. When we have so many guys who I love in this mid tier, like, I mean, I love these Minnesota guys, and I really, really like this LA and Houston. And then depending on who plays, the Toronto, Brooklyn, those are my priorities. If you can find a way to stack LeBron and Luka with those guys, great. I'll probably do that in a lineup, a series of lineups, maybe like have 15 different entries or whatever. I maybe enter 50 tournaments, and that'll be that. I'm just not going to like make it a priority. Maybe I'll, I'd say a quarter of my lineups at most, but I probably won't play Luka alone. And one guy who's not going to show up as a good play here, who should be noted, is Malik Monk.
Ooh, I haven't played him in a while.
Yeah, he hasn't been good. I don't care. You have a small slate and a guy who can, with heat check ability, who can absolutely catch fire. And I think that we should take advantage of it at really low ownership. So a lot of the plays that this is a slate for me where I'm either going to lose it all, like I'll lose like every bet, or I'm going to win a ton.
The other thing I was going to say, by the way, is if you reset 3 months ago, which is it's kind of funny to say, and you told me Anthony Davis was out, and you told me Westbrook was $9K, I would probably play him. Right. He's 6,500 on FanDuel, and
he's not going to be crazy high owned either.
Yeah, I know.
That's what's insane. I mean, I honestly look. It's a hero play on DraftKings, but it can get there. The only thing is, like, I mean, the weirdest part is, like, in the last game, he had a 36% usage rate. They literally missed. I think he had like 11 assists in the first half or something. Maybe the second half. 11 assists that didn't convert, that were all 50% or better. It's just you can't help if other guys are missing shots. Westbrook's usage without Davis has been really good. It's just the production has been really lacking.
The efficiency is just terrible. I mean, like.
Yeah, but even when he shoots well, it's like the assists aren't there. But it's not because he's not necessarily creating shots for people. I mean, when is like Westbrook? I've never seen him have 1 assist games in my life, and he's had 2 in a row.
Yeah,
that's not going to continue. It's absolutely not going. There's no way it can continue. They need to figure out a way to use this team a little differently. Play LeBron as the small ball 4, and let him body up everybody. Put Maxi Kleber on him, and who's their best defender, and let him go to work. But other than that, this is going to be the other guys, I think, doing a lot of the work here. And Carmelo, fine, but I kind of like the idea of playing Monk as opposed to Carmelo, just given the ownership, and Carmelo being the more clear play. But again, it's going to come down to starting lineups, and sadly, we probably won't have that early unless the Lakers make a big, hey, this is what we're going to do now, and we're going to make sure to put our hopes on Dalen Horton-Tucker or Austin Reeves or something.
Right.
And if they do that, we can change it. But the Lakers are in desperate need to change things. So this is a really interesting slate. There's a lot of things. My priorities are going to be the Toronto, Brooklyn, Golden State, Minnesota games. But I think that even if Van Fleet plays, I think it's going to really suck the ownership out of these Toronto guys, and I will just go right back to it. I think they should all be 20+%, 30% owned. They won by 30 points last night. They didn't need everybody. Gary Trent would have got there. Scotty Barnes obviously went completely nuts.
Yeah.
I think you want to get that game. And like you said, I do think that game stays close enough after getting absolutely smashed the night before. So.
All right. I'll be able to join you probably. I'll have to keep you updated because I have something I have to do at 5. I'm going to try. Okay. I hope to get back by 6. If I'm not, you could just start it and I'll join you. I'll keep you updated though. Because
we felt like we weren't giving the people the best product yesterday with Rody, because it was sort of like all the news sort of happened right when we got on air, and that sometimes happens. But I'd like to. I'm going to start, if you don't mind. I'll send the invite to you tonight because I want to start at 15 minutes. I'll start at 5:45.
That's fine. That's fine, and I'll just join when I can.
Exactly, and I just think that it gives us a better chance to really give the people a better understanding. I also do want to throw out, guys, please do like and subscribe, and also remember, we're going to start doing this, this circle thing where we're going to take everybody's lineups, analyze who won and lost. And from the weeks, we're going to take bad lineups, good lineups, try to just re-engineer and, hey, how did we make mistakes? How did we do this right? How did we do this wrong? And we'll include my lineups as well. But we're going to start doing that once a week. I think next week we'll start it. Let us know what day is best for you guys in the True DFS and any of the channels, but the support channel will probably be the best one.
All right.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Let's crush it tonight.
All right.